Thank you for listening to the Distinguished Physical Education Podcast. Before we get into today's episode, I want to take a moment to invite you to something I'm really excited about. The dates and location for the Colorado Health and PE Council Summit are set for June 3rd and 4th at Hinckley High School in Aurora, Colorado. This is a free professional learning opportunity designed specifically for K-12 health and physical education teachers. What makes this conference special is that every session is grounded in best practices in health and physical education and intentionally models effective instructional strategies. Sessions will focus on topics like standards-based activities, assessment, curricular resources, inclusion, student voice, and teacher growth. You'll find both classroom-based and activity-based sessions, but you won't be sitting silently through lectures or just playing games with no connection to teaching and learning. This conference is designed to give you ideas and strategies that actually make it back into your classroom and elevate the experience your students have every day. Another thing that sets this conference apart is how we support our presenters. If your session is accepted, you'll receive feedback, guidance, and an invitation to a virtual facilitator prep session so you feel confident and prepared to lead meaningful learning. If you're interested in presenting, submissions are open now with a deadline of March 15th, 2026. You'll find the submission form linked in the show notes. And if you're planning to attend, save the dates and spread the word. Registration will be open soon. We hope to see you there. My guest today is Sarah Fuller, an award-winning adapted physical educator and author of the Ultimate Adapted PE Manual. She taught in the Webster Central School District for over a decade and now serves as an adjunct lecturer at SUNY Brockport. In this episode, Sarah shares resources and strategies for inclusive physical education. You can find more resources on her website, easyadaptedpe.com. And now I bring you Sarah Fuller. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
You've been teaching adapted PE for over a decade, and a lot of general PE teachers, they can feel unsure or even overwhelmed when it comes to finding creative ways to include all students, especially those with exceptional needs. What is it that you wish more PE teachers understood about designing meaningful and inclusive experiences for all students?
That's a really good question. I think one of the biggest things is that every year the class makeup is going to look different, right? Because you have kids coming in that have had different experiences and they're coming into phys ed. And it's important to kind of look at that new group of students and decide what is their goal going to be for the year? Because it doesn't always have to be traditional sports or we're doing our outdoor unit or we're doing our orienteering unit. It can be things that are like, you know what, this group of students, they came in, I've had them for a week now, and I'm really seeing that cooperation is really low between them or their communication skills. Maybe it's their reciprocal play, if you're really looking at the adapted PE part of it, and really focusing on like an overall goal for that class that has to do with that specific thing. It doesn't always have to be based on sports. That's my one big thing. And really you're kind of curating this group experience, right? And so you want to try to ensure that every student is being included. And how do you do that? Because that feels very overwhelming because we don't know every single student, everything that they enjoy. And one of the things that I love to use is UDL. It's Universal Design for Learning. And what you're doing is you're setting up your activities so that anyone can participate, whether they have done it a million times before or have never heard of the sport. And you are providing them with multiple different choices, whether it has to do with the equipment or the rules or the size of the playing area, the boundary lines. Maybe you're using personnel, so maybe you're incorporating aides or peer buddies. So you're really gathering all of these different resources so that students that come into your class are confident because they come in and they say, oh, I can use this giant yoga ball, or I can use this small gator ball, or I can use this or this or that. So they know that I can come in here and I don't have to do it exactly perfect, exactly the right way. There is no perfect in here. I can just find joy and play and have fun. And through that, the kids are really going to show you what they enjoy doing, how they want to engage. And you're also going to see where their challenges lie, like where those areas of improvement are. The other thing I do want to say is that once you start doing it, it becomes like second nature. So it feels like a lot in the beginning, but then after a while, you're just gonna see the students in your class just enjoy what they're doing. The behaviors are gonna drop, the engagement is gonna increase, and you're gonna enjoy your class a lot more.
It sounds like so much of what you said would fall under the category of differentiation. You're observing what students need, and then you're finding creative ways to meet the needs of those students. How well prepared can you be to provide the supports that students need before you get a chance to know your students and to see what they need in order to be successful?
I think one of the biggest things we can do is provide a multitude of different learning avenues. So, for example, we are putting up visuals for our visual learners. We're doing demonstrations for our physical learners, our kinesthetic learners, any kind of auditory, obviously using our language to give those directions, but always keeping it short and sweet and simple. I think using the kids as demonstrators, and I know a lot of our phys ed teachers do this, but there's a lot that don't. And whether or not they have a unique need, let's say that they do have a unique need, you have a student with a disability in your class, using them as the demonstrator is like a really huge piece as well, because you're going to get an overall vibe from the class. You're going to understand whether or not there's some kids in that class who have never seen a student with a disability before, who are questioning, well, why are you letting this student do it? Or you're going to see, wow, I have a really great group of kids. They are totally inclusive. They're clapping when this kiddo is done. They're very much supportive. I know that I can do a lot more with this class and I can really push this class to be inclusive because they're ready for it. Whereas if maybe you've got some kiddos who have never, even worked with or seen a student with a disability before, you might have to take it a little bit slower. You might not be able to jump into a peer buddy program right away or things like that. So just having those visuals, prepping your aids. So that's like a really, really big one. And we can dive into that if you want. I think having that really open mind and positive attitude and just knowing that like it's never gonna look exactly how you want it to. When you have kiddos with unique needs, you could prepare to the ends of the earth, and most likely your lesson will look nothing like what you put down on paper. And that you just got to be cool about it. You have to just roll with the punches and at the same time be collecting that information about what did work and what didn't and why it didn't work and how do I engage them next.
You just mentioned aides or paraprofessionals, is what some folks call them. What role do they play in supporting all students' success in PE? Can you share an example of a time when collaboration between colleagues at a school really made a difference for students?
Yes, absolutely. So, paraprofessionals, in my opinion, are like the number one resource that you can have in your adapted phys ed class or general phys ed for that matter. They know the students, they're with them all day long. So they know from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. Their parents typically will walk their child to the paraprofessional and say, oh, hey, they had a rough night. They didn't sleep well. They weren't able to take their meds this morning. They didn't eat breakfast, whatever that might be. That's really crucial information for you. Knowing those paraprofessionals and prepping them and having conversations with them is super, super important. And creating those relationships with them is really important. I was pushing into a general physical education class, and there was about 40 students in the class. It was fourth grade, and there were 5 students who had adapted physical education on their IEP. I had 3 aides at the time who were wonderful. We always chatted. I always kind of knew what was going on with the kids. We had this really good rapport, and I knew the activities that they wanted to participate in. And this is the aides, and the ones that they were like not so keen on, that they were a little bit nervous about or didn't feel confident in. And because of that, we just had a really great relationship. So we were pushed into this class, and we had 2 students with autism. One student had cerebral palsy and was in a wheelchair. And then the other student, I believe, had Down syndrome. So we had all sorts of varying disabilities. And this is fourth grade. And so by fourth grade, you're really wanting these students to be interacting with their peers. You no longer are really wanting to be, as the adaptive PE teacher, one on one with them if they have the ability to be socially interacting with people of their same age, right? You don't want adults always around because they're in fourth grade, they're going to go to fifth, and then it's middle school, and that's a whole other ball game. So we were all feeling overwhelmed because it's a really big group of kids and a lot of adaptations to make. So what we started to do was to implement a peer buddy program. And that takes a lot of training and things like that. But I didn't know the kids in the general physical education class because I'm the adaptive PE teacher. I'm just I was itinerant, so I was just running in and out of buildings. So I had to really rely on those paraprofessionals and have these conversations and say, okay, who do we think is going to be a good peer buddy for Kaylee? Who do we think is going to be a good peer buddy for Michael? And have these conversations with them on why they thought that and really including them in on it. For one thing, they loved it because they really felt like they were part of the team. If I didn't have them, I would have had no idea. I would have been pairing these kids up with whoever was willing to hang out with them, right? Which isn't always the best choice. So they were super, super helpful. They set up a sign up rotation system and they basically filled in wherever we needed them. And it really gave me time to assess. It gave me time to incorporate all the visuals or equipment I needed. It gave me time to consult with the general phys ed teachers. So I knew that they had it, like they were implementing this peer buddy system. If they needed me, I was there, but I was also able to kind of jump around between all four kids to make sure that the peer buddy system was going well, the adaptations were in place and all those different things. So for me, they're completely invaluable. And creating those relationships at the beginning of the year is going to make your year so much easier.
Just a quick pause to share that if you're looking for professional learning that connects to your day to day teaching, we now offer 5 self paced graduate level courses designed specifically for PE teachers. They can be used toward a master's, salary advancement, or teaching license renewal. Details are in the show notes. I absolutely love how you framed collaborating with paraprofessionals as like equal partners because they have a wealth of knowledge that is really going to help benefit students. I'll be honest with you, what I see happen most often in the PE classes that I get to observe are paraprofessionals who don't really have a direction from the teacher. And as a result, I think they are a little hesitant to engage in the class and they're not being utilized to their full extent. And oftentimes, I believe that they truly want to be. They just haven't had that opportunity to collaborate with the general PE teacher. What advice would you give to a teacher who hasn't really met with their paraprofessional, hasn't collaborated on what they want their participation to look like?
That is very, very common. I hear that a lot, that it's really difficult to kind of get the pairs moving. And I think I do agree with you. I think most paraprofessionals want to help. They want to be there, but they really just don't know what to do. And one of the best things you can do is to give them it's called a paraprofessional information sheet. And Dr. Lauren Lieberman and I wrote an article about it. It's basically a full informational sheet that you give to the paras, and if you haven't had a chance to talk to them yet, it's like September-ish, October-ish, give it to them anyways. It doesn't matter. It's better later than never. And in this informational sheet, you're going to kind of gather some idea of what these paras are interested in helping you with and what they are absolutely not interested in helping you with. So you're going to find out maybe they played basketball in high school or in college. Maybe they were on the swim team. Maybe they absolutely despise pickleball. Whatever that might be, that's going to give you a general idea of what they're willing to help you with. So let's say, for example, I said maybe they played basketball in high school and you have this basketball unit coming up. That is a really great opportunity for you to say, hey, Carol, I know that you played basketball in high school. Do you mind running a little warm up for the kids? Just a little bit of dribbling or tossing the ball or whatever it is that you feel comfortable with while I go ahead and set up the group work or the stations. This is really going to help give them an idea of, okay, like she's comfortable with me teaching or he's comfortable with this. And they're going to step a little bit out of their comfort zone as opposed to just kind of hanging back or just hanging with the kids. And the other paras will see, wow, she just gave her a really cool role. I might let her know that I love volleyball and I'm going to go ahead and do that. But gathering that information is really important. And just for example, really quickly, I had a swimming unit coming up one year and I had given that paraprofessional form out. So I knew that one of the aides did not like getting in the pool. That was like, no, no, like she was just not going to do it. And I'd heard through the grapevine from a couple of the other aides that she was planning on just like calling out sick because she just did not. She was like, did not want to get in the pool. And so I ended up like catching her and like having a conversation and just saying, hey, I know you don't want to be in the pool. I completely understand that. So how about instead of this, I guarantee you don't have to go in that pool, but you're going to come with me. You're going to be my deck girl. So if any of the kids don't want to get in, you can help be responsible for them. If a kiddo needs to be changed, you can go and help with that. Maybe getting kids in and out of the pool. but you don't have to get in the water. And she was like, okay, I'm in. Like, I'll be there. I'm coming. But had I not known that, right, and I hadn't had those conversations with the parents in that relationship, I wouldn't have known. I would have been down two hands, which would have been detrimental to taking kids with unique needs to the pool, So paraprofessionals are just completely invaluable.
That sounds like a pretty incredible resource that you created. Is that something that we could link in the notes to the show?
Yes, absolutely. We can definitely do that.
When we first connected, you said to me that when we include students' superpowers, their confidence turns into growth and then into independence. And I really connected with that quote. Can you give an example of how you helped a student recognize and use one of their superpowers in class and the impact that it had on not only that student, but on their peers and then even the classroom culture in PE?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So, just to give it a little bit of background about like what is she talking about? Like, what is a superpower? A lot of times I feel like we really focus on areas of improvement. We write goals for areas of improvement. Our overall thing is how do we improve these kids? How do we get the data looking beautiful so that the parents know they're doing better, which we want. Of course, that's very, very important. But at the end of the day, too, we do want to look at those things that those kiddos are amazing at, their superpowers. And it doesn't always have to be physical. So I know we're very physical people and we want to stay in that little realm because that's comfortable for us. But sometimes people have superpowers that aren't physical. So maybe drawing, maybe singing. There's all of these other areas that kids can be excelling in and that they really enjoy. And when you have a superpower, when you're really good at something, you want to engage in it and you're confident in it, and so then what happens? Our behaviors decrease because I'm feeling great. Like I can do this, no problem. And so my behavior goes down, which means that maybe the opportunities for me to be more social with my peers or engage with my peers, which can be very tough and adaptive to that, there's more opportunities now because I'm feeling good. I'm feeling confident. I feel like I want to be here. I want to be in this space because I know I get to shine. So an example for that is I had a student who I noticed really, really enjoyed drawing. And that was what she earned. So, first, I don't love this saying, but it's first work and then play. For me, it's first play and then you earn. You know what I mean? We play. That's what we do. That's what we're doing. We're creating joy through play. But that's what she was always earning. So she would earn a little whiteboard and she would get to scribble on it and do her thing. So she did an activity she didn't enjoy. And then for 1 minute, let's say, she sat to the side and she scribbled. And I just thought to myself, it's lovely. It's so good. I love that that's what we're getting from her, but I also don't love that she's getting all this time away. Like, we're away. And it's 1 minute here or there. I understand that. But how can we then challenge ourselves to create activities in which we incorporate the students' superpowers so that they are more engaged because they know they get to do that thing that they love and that they're good at. So, for example, this was a relay race. And I say race, but it's really at your own pace, right? So we're going through the relay, and I believe it was dribbling a soccer ball. And again, it's any kind of ball you want. It doesn't have to be a soccer ball, but we're using our feet, trying not to use our hands. And then we got to a mat. And at that mat, I put down a whiteboard and I put down a marker. And there was a specific, I think, a box on the whiteboard. And so she got to draw or scribble whatever she wanted in that. When she was done, she kept dribbling and then she kicked the soccer ball into the net. In the beginning, we had another whiteboard there. So that was kind of a double incentive to begin with. And then eventually we would take one away, maybe at the end. So we're just doing that one in the middle. But she's feeling like, yes, if I get even halfway, I know I'm getting to do the scribble. And it's part of the activity. She's getting down, she's scribbling, she's standing back up. That's hard for some of our kiddos in adapted PE. They don't want to do that. But just finding ways to incorporate what they love because then behaviors just they dissipate. They really truly do. And I like to think about, what is our goal as phys ed teachers? Are we just teaching them sports? What are we actually trying to teach them? We're trying to teach the whole child. That's the physical, the affective, the emotional, the sensory, all of those things together. We should be incorporating those into our activities so that the kids are really getting like a well-rounded education out of it and their confidence is going to increase. I think that's when we're really doing our job. Taking data is great on the areas of improvement. I think it's really important, but creating that joy so that they want to be there and that they want to keep moving from elementary to middle to high school, finding out what they love. I think that's really our overarching goal.
One of the things that I've taken away from our conversation so far and the conversations that I've had with both Brad and Matt is just how creative adaptive PE teachers are. Whether that's finding students' superpower and leveraging it so that the student will engage in the activity. And then when they're engaging in the activity, they're going to want to come back to PE next time. And I know that listeners are going to appreciate the connections that you make between engagement and joy and on task behaviors. You don't have behavior issues when students want to be there and they want to be engaging in the activities because they know that you're going to modify those activities to meet their needs and give them opportunities to experience success in them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want to come to phys ed. I get questions all the time about what do I do about these elopers, the kiddos that just want to run out the room and the kiddos that are crying and don't want to do anything. And I hate to say this, and this is not correct in all cases, okay? But sometimes they just don't want to engage in what you're doing. If they're flopping on the ground, it could be too hard, it could be boring, it could be something that they're just not interested in. So really looking at reworking it. I mean, it could just be that they are done for the day and they're just exhausted and they need a nap and they're checked out. We can't always fix every single situation or every single behavior, but that's a form of communication. It's a huge form of communication. They're telling you something, and it's our jobs to kind of figure that out and to be creative and come up with ways to engage them, and knowing what their superpower is and knowing what they love. I mean, that's a great trick to have in your back pocket.
I'm making a connection to an activity that we did in our virtual course. So, my colleague Jen and I, we run a virtual PE course. We had our second session, it was last week actually, and it was on high expectations for student behavior. And in it, we had a couple of different scenarios. The one that I was thinking of was a secondary scenario where the teacher clearly communicated expectations for student behavior, but then when they released them into this activity, which was like a little too close to official basketball rules, like a basketball tournament, they noticed that students were playing a little bit too aggressive. They were teasing or making fun of each other. And we talked about how would you pause that lesson and like what type of class reset would you do to correct those student behaviors? And another question, which is why I thought of this, would you modify the activity itself in order to prevent a lot of these behaviors from happening? So I think sometimes teachers think, well, I already told students what I expected them to do in the activity. I was really clear on my expectations. I don't know why they're just not following the rules. The answer to that question could be the activity doesn't lend itself towards student engagement. If it's too challenging for students, if it's too easy for students, if there's not enough differentiation, whether that's modifications or extensions on the other side of it. I love the things that you're saying because they really meet students' needs and provide them with opportunities to engage in something that they feel appropriately challenged at.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. I would probably also identify it, like verbally identify what I was seeing. I might identify the behavior that's going on and say, what do you guys think we could do differently here? Because this doesn't seem to be working for everybody, and even bringing them into it, especially if it's that middle school, high school vibe. What do you guys think could be changing here? Because what I set up and what my expectations are, they're not happening. So how can we make this work so that you guys can follow the directions I gave, but you guys are also having fun? And I think that communication piece is really important with the students for sure.
Yeah, that's like the exact conversation we had in the course last week. Teachers said that because we're talking about differentiation. So teachers said, well, you could have one court that's a competitive court so that students could choice into that. You could have another court that focuses on a collaborative basketball activity where the goal is for the entire group of students who are playing to be successful. And then maybe you have a third and a fourth court that just work on different skills and students can engage at whatever level it is that they're comfortable with for that day. Then you remove that situation where you have high school athletes playing too aggressively with kids who are just like, this is not my style. And when you provide students with those choices, they feel more welcome in class and you have a more inclusive PE culture. And then they want to show up the next day because they know they're going to get to choice into an activity that still aligns with your daily objective for the day. I'm not talking about just like random choice activities, but I really appreciate what you've been saying about modifying activities so that students feel welcome and included. Many PE teachers want to do the right thing for their students with exceptional needs, but sometimes they feel unsure or afraid that they're going to do it wrong. And then that can be a barrier to them experimenting with new things, especially supports that their students need. What are some ways that general PE teachers can create a more welcoming and inclusive space for their students while they continue to learn how to modify activities and provide support like you've been talking about?
Okay, yeah, we chatted about this a little bit. One thing that I didn't say is that teacher attitudes are really big. They're a really big deal. So the best thing that you can do to include students, if you're doing the modifications and you're trying your best at UDL and you've got the visuals, is really about when those kids come in, you are giving them the same positive, excited attitude that you're giving everybody else in the class. You're including them in the demonstrations. You are saying hello. You are giving them high fives, whatever it is that you do. Because as soon as they see that something is hard for you, the adult in the classroom is having a hard time with this, or they're feeling challenged, or they're grumpy because they don't know what to do, they are going to feel that same feeling. They're going to get that energy from you right away, and that is going to just shut them right down. So I think really having an attitude that is, I can do this. This is going to be great. This is going to be easy. I'm going to talk to the student with a disability or the student with a unique need, and I'm going to say, what is it that you need? I'm going to include them in all of these different steps and just making sure that they're part of the class. And I think too, when you are utilizing all these different things, these UDL and the equipment and the visuals, we're not making a big deal about it. We're not saying that this is only for the student. It is for everybody to use. We don't need to like say, oh, we have so and so in the class. It doesn't have to be like that. Just put everything out for everybody. And that way they're going to feel included. They're going to feel confident. And it lends itself to accessibility and inclusion, really, and independence. But keeping yourself happy and joyful and keeping that big smile on your face, I think is half the battle, really.
I'm really happy to hear you say that because part of my job is to observe teachers. And one of the things that I coach teachers on is differentiation, like we've been talking about today. And I've always said that when differentiation is done effectively, it really should be challenging for me to observe because the teacher doesn't advertise it to everyone. Some students might be using an object that's a different density or a different size than other students. And obviously, at this point in my career, I know most of the time why certain students are using it, but the students themselves may not know. And the teacher shouldn't just be advertising, okay, Sarah, you get to use this ball, and Gary, you get to use this special kind of ball. You provide those options for students so that they can be successful in the activity without just broadcasting to everyone why they're doing a different version of the activity.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that would be embarrassing, I would think, even as an adult, if someone had to say, you're going to get this special area over here. And we want to really make sure that the kiddo's dignity stays intact because that's a really big part about confidence and wanting to be active and try new things. If they're coming to phys ed, chances are, you're throwing all these new things out at them and it's going to be very challenging for them to even try it.
You just mentioned when students come into the gym, like you said something about when students come to phys ed, you want to make them feel included. Is there any advice that you can give teachers on the physical environment itself? I'm thinking about lights, I'm thinking about music, other types of noise. Are there things that general PE teachers can do to make the physical environment itself more welcoming for students who might have exceptional needs?
That's a great question. Most of the time, it's helpful to have the music down low. If they're coming into music, let's just turn it down. If you can turn the lights down, feel free to do it. Not everybody can, but it would be lovely to do something like that. Making sure that when they come in, they know exactly where they're supposed to go, right? So that's having floor spots for everybody. And so maybe they all have names on them. Maybe they all have letters because we're not going to do names every year, but maybe there's letters, maybe there's numbers, maybe there's favorite colors, whatever it might be, but being very specific about where that student needs to go so they're coming in confidently and making that a routine. So every time they come in, it's going to be this similar thing. I come in, I find my floor spot, I sit down, or whatever that routine might be for your class. I know, for example, one year, this was a non-integrated class, so a non-integrated adapted phys ed. It was the middle of winter, and in upstate New York and Rochester, it gets very dark for a very long time. and cloudy and just kind of miserable, right? And it was, I believe it was like January-ish, maybe February. I decided like everybody was exhausted. So I turned the lights down. So we have windows, so the windows still brought in the light. And then we had this really old rolling TV, and I'd put on YouTube and I'd put the crackling fireplace. And so I put that on, and then I put on some classical music, and these kids came in, and it was very quiet. They came in so calm and so lovely, and we just were doing our laps and we were doing our thing and no behaviors. It was the quietest I've ever heard that class, but it's because I knew they were coming in with zero energy, right? And I'm not gonna be like, "All right, let's go, let's do this." I think that's important. You can check in with the classroom teacher ahead of time and say, "How are we looking this week? How's everybody doing? What are your thoughts?" Another thing is allowing the kids to choose the music. You have to obviously make sure it's appropriate, but most of the time it is, and giving that autonomy. I mean, some kids love music, and that is why they come to PE so they can jam out. So why not let them choose a song? And so that, even if this is a really challenging activity for Bobby, well, I'm going to let him choose the music during this one, and then maybe he'll play. So I think that's really important. And just always being aware of that sensory. Sometimes if you've got 35 basketballs bouncing at the same time, that's going to be a lot. So maybe we just break it up, right? We have a station of 5 basketballs here and here, here, however, if you want to break it up, but not having that sensory overload. If you're feeling as an adult, if we're feeling like that's too much, then think about kids in their little bodies or even middle school and high school. It's a lot for them to take on. The other thing is space. It's important to very specifically create spaces for, especially for kids with autism or kids with unique needs, so that they can see where the boundaries are, where they're supposed to be in space and time. A lot of times we do that by color coding. So we might have station number 1 has red cones all around it. Station number 2 has yellow cones, and then having the station number up there. So a red number 1 is on the red cones. A yellow number 2 is on the yellow cones, and being very specific about what you choose and where you put things is really important. We're teaching to the whole child, so we have to think about that sensory piece. So I think that's an awesome question.
The music one is big for me. I can't tell you how many gyms I've been in over the years where the music is just absolutely blasting. There's, like, no bass, and it's all treble. And it just kills my ears. I know that there are students in here that it's making feel uncomfortable, so it can be a delicate conversation to have with a PE teacher, like, "You gotta just turn the stereo down a little bit." This space, especially in high school, such a large gymnasium, can be really intimidating spaces for all students, not just students who have different needs. You made me think when you brought up the structured entry routine of how important that is for all students. So I was working with a secondary PE teacher a while back who was new to a school and trying to develop their program. And they were greeting students at the door. It was clear that they were developing good relationships with their kids, but the teacher just said to come on in and, like, do a walk and talk, and there was no, like, topic, there was no real expectations or structure, and there just so happened to be a couple pieces of equipment that were in the gym. So you have students just kind of wandering in and not really knowing exactly what to do, and picking up a volleyball and, bumping and setting it back to each other. In all honesty, they weren't misbehaving, but I can imagine what that environment would feel like for someone who is already a little bit intimidated to come in with bright lights and loud music and no real clear direction. You're really not setting students up for success if that's how the class starts.
You're absolutely right. I could just see behaviors immediately with something like that. I think the verbal is great, right? But we've got to have some sort of visual. So some sort of like, this is the structure of what's going to happen today, like a big visual on the wall, because everybody could use it. Even the aides that are trickling in at the end, like they're going to need to see what's going on or what's happening. And maybe some students that are coming in late from the nurse or the bathroom or whatever. It's great for them to be able to just take a peek at the board. I worked with some phys ed teachers who had a whiteboard in there. They would have written on the whiteboard exactly what they wanted the kids to do, right? So that's another thing. If you don't want to do the pictures, that might be a little bit too elementary. Middle school and high school, you can absolutely just put something on the board for them to read. So you're giving the verbal, but then you're also having something prepared if there for those kiddos that might need that. And to go along with that music, piece that you mentioned, if you've got a kid with a visual impairment, for example, and you've got this booming music, auditory is their jam. So if they've got this booming music happening and then somebody's giving direction or they're supposed to be going in this way or that way, or they're trying to hear their beat ball so they can locate that and play with it, they can't hear it because there's so many other things going on. So I think that's a really great point about the music and just preparing your space. It's almost like setting up a play. I like to put it that way. You have to kind of set the stage, right? So you have the equipment, you have the visuals, you have the schedules, you have the lights, you have the music. All that stuff needs to come together ahead of time. Who's in my classroom? How do I curate this so that it's going to be helpful for all of the kids? And you might find that changes from week to week, day to day, class to class. But I think that's important. And then you get into your routine, like we were just talking about. Maybe the routine is you come in, you look at the whiteboard, you do your walk and talk with that specific subject, and then you know what's coming next. You have that act 1, act 2, act 3, whatever it might be. And then you're prepping the actors, and you're the actors, the aides and the teachers, and then the kids are the audience. And you're either engaging them or you're not. And if you're not engaging them, then you need to switch something up. So for me, that's kind of how I always look at it. Like, as long as I've prepared everything on the front end, I've prepared the personnel, the people I'm working with, peer buddies, then it really comes down to engagement. And if my material's not engaging enough, I switch it up and find out how to make that more engaging.
I really love that analogy. I think teachers are absolutely going to resonate with that. We've been kind of alluding to mindset shifts, whether it's how you set your gym up to welcome your students or how you change your mindset around what you want your entry activity to look like. How do you encourage teachers who want to prioritize the support that they provide for their students in either an adapted PE program or if it's a general PE teacher and they have students that join their other classes? Even if it's just something small that they can experiment within their next class. I know that you've given a lot of great examples. Is there anything else that you would share with teachers who might want to start experimenting with small changes to make their environment more welcoming for students?
I would probably say that, especially at the beginning of the year, I would probably do less. So I would put, and I know that sounds silly. You're like, what could they do more to make it better? Sometimes we do so much that it becomes overwhelming, and I would kind of see what it is that the kids gravitate towards. What are the students really engaging with? And let them show you what they can do and start to build relationships with them around that. Because once you're kind of showing them, yep, you have some autonomy about what's going on. I want to see what you can do, what you engage in. How do you want to use this jump rope? How do you want to use this ball? Like, what are some rules that you want to come up with during this basketball game? And really putting in the work in the beginning with relationships and not necessarily like having this perfect lesson plan with all these modifications and all the UDL and all the things. That's so much. Start with building those relationships with the kids and the paras. And then your year will just flow. And then you can slowly start to look at that UDL. Okay, I'm gonna shift towards visuals. I'm gonna make sure I'm adding visuals. And then once you feel like you've got a grasp on that, slowly, just one at a time, start adding these pieces in. Yeah, I mean, I would prioritize relationships, and naturally, all of these other pieces are going to come because you're going to learn what those kids' superpowers are, what brings them joy, what engages them physically, and then you'll be able to build your program around that.
It also seems like you really can't do it all at once because you don't have the information that you need yet, right? You need to build relationships with students. You need to identify their needs, and then you have to determine what supports you can provide for those kids. Sarah, I know it's getting late on the East Coast for you, but I did want to take just a moment to give you an opportunity to talk about either your book or your website so that you can give folks a little bit more information on those amazing resources.
Oh, great. Thank you, Gary. Yeah, so I recently wrote a book. Well, it's more of a manual. So it's the Ultimate Adapted PE Manual, and it's a yearly guidebook. So it basically takes you from August through June, and it has a lot of digital resources within it. And then you access those through the website. And really, it has anything you would need to organize yourself for the year so that we're not playing catch up with things like collecting data and goal setting and parent communication. There's parent newsletters in there. There are lesson plans. So there's about 5 for every month. So it really kind of helps you to not feel like you're playing catch up all year long. So you're organized, there's checklists, there's all sorts of things for annual review reports. I mean, it just goes on and on. But one of the biggest reasons I wrote the book is because I did feel like there are some really great phys ed programs out there and adaptive phys ed programs, but nothing really prepares you for when you are that first year teacher, second year, third year teacher, and you just get thrown into the jungle and you realize I really learned how to teach, but now there's all these other duties and there's all these other things that I'm responsible for. And how do I organize myself? How do I make sure all of this gets done in a timely manner on top of writing up the IEPs and making sure the goals are sufficient? So that's basically why I wrote the manual, and hopefully people will find that it's useful and that the resources are great and that they enjoy it. And it's really just to help teachers. That's one of the biggest reasons that I wrote it. So hopefully they will enjoy it. You can find it on my website. It's at easyadaptedpe.com.
I'll make sure that the website and the book are both linked in our notes to the episode. And I just wanted to thank you again, Sarah, for sharing your expertise with all the teachers who listen.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks so much for having me, and I'm happy to come back anytime.